Chaos Space Marines are the opposite of the noble astartes of the Imperium. These are traitors that first defected into chaos during the Horus heresy, well, for some even before that. There are some Chaos and Traitor Space Marines here that are even older than the official birth of the Imperium at the end of the Unification Wars. At least one had even witnessed the wrath of the Thunder Warriors. So even though time in the warp doesn't really flow as it does in real space, we can still count their years or how old they are judging by their origin points. So here are 9 of them. We begin with Erebus. Erebus is one of the most notorious figures in the galaxy. He is a senior Dark Apostle, and back during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, he was the first chaplain of the Word Bearers. He started life as an ordinary kid on the world of Colchis, born into a regular family in the late 30th millennium. Even as a boy, he was all about manipulation, deceit, and stirring up trouble. His actual name is lost to time, as the name Erebus was adopted by him from another boy he strangled and killed. In the Child of Chaos short story, it is said that Erebus discovered the ruinous powers when he saw a mirror shattered into 4 parts and his face reflected from all 4 of them. So when the Covenant of Colchis, of which Erebus had been a priest of, fell at the hands of Lorgar and his followers, Erebus went into hiding for a time before re-emerging as an acolyte of the Primarch. This shows that Erebus was at least as old if not older than the Primarch Lorgar here, which makes him pretty ancient in the current setting. Next we have Callous Typhon. So Typhus, originally named Callous Typhon, is a grim and twisted figure in Nurgle's forces. He is the lord of the First Plague Company of the Death God and serves as the host of the Destroyer Hive, a horrific plague. Typhus came from the world of Barbarous, a toxic hellscape ruled by mutant psyker warlords before Mortarion overthrew them. Typhon himself was a half-breed, born from one of Barbarous's overlords, a strange human-like Xenos species. As a child, Typhon was plagued by strange, uncontrollable phenomena, and later, when he matured into his adult years, he learned to harness the psychic energy that flowed through him. When Mortarion, still a young adolescent, first rebelled against the High Overlord Necare and left the cruel rulers of Barbarous, Typhus was the first person that Mortarion encountered. Typhus, already a mature man by then, helped to guide the young Primarch into safety. So considering that Mortarion was still a teenager when he met, and Typhus was already a grown man, we can tell that Typhus was definitely older than the scattering of the Primarchs, which took place in 792 of M30. Next we have Carfon. So Carfon, the first captain of the Word Bearers Traitor Legion, was not only the foster father of Primarch Lorgar, but also one of the key figures responsible for corrupting him and the 17th Legion. Even though many in the Legion first, initially, looked down upon him as a half astartes because he wasn't fully transformed into a space marine, when he grew into power, they had to step in line. He was born on the desert world of Colchis and grew up in an orphanage. Eventually he rose to become a priest of the Covenant of Colchis, the planet's dominant theocracy. He was later exiled for his fanaticism, and by the time Carfon found Lorgar, he was already a seasoned priest and a leader, making him at least 40 years older than Lorgar and the other Primarchs, but not necessarily older than the first Astartes. Then we come to Luther. So famously known as the Arch-Betrayer, he was once the second in command of the Dark Angel Space Marine Legion. But jealousy and arrogance got the better of him, and during the Great Crusade, he fell into chaos. Eventually he became the leader of the Fallen, those Dark Angels who turned against the Emperor and the Lion L. Johnson and embraced Dark Gods. Luther's story started on the death world of Caliban, where he was a renowned knight in a monastic brotherhood called the Order. As for his age, well, by the time he discovered the Lion some 10 years after the Primarchs were scattered, which means he discovered the Lion in 802 of M30, he was already a grown man. Luther was old enough to be an experienced knight and the leader of the Order, but still strong enough to bond closely with the Lion and fight alongside him. So when the Emperor arrived and brought the Lion into the Great Crusade, Luther was probably in his 50s or even more, given that rejuvenate treatment in the Grim Dark is quite a common treatment and would still make him a warrior in his prime. So that, along with maybe some tinkering by the Emperor himself, the Knights of the Order were able to transition into becoming Space Marines, even though their age were pretty expired for the process. After him we get Arzek Ahriman. So Isaac Ahriman is one of the most infamous Chaos Space Marines out there. He is part of the Thousand Sons Legion and second only to Magnus in sorceress power. His claim to infamy is the rubric of Ahriman, where this massive sorceress ritual was supposed to protect his legion from mutations, instead backfired spectacularly, turning most of his brothers into lifeless dust-filled automatons. Before all that though, Ahriman had a humble beginning. Well, sort of. He was born on Terra, back when it was still a patchwork of warring tribes and empires. His people were part of the Achaemenid Empire, which had allied with the Emperor during the Unification Wars. Thanks to that alliance, his tribe dodged most of the apocalyptic chaos of the atomic bombs and the bloody invasions by the Thunder Warriors. When the Emperor finally wrapped up the Unification Wars around 712 of M30 and forged the Imperium, Ahriman and his twin brother were pretty young men. By the time Terra made its alliance with Mars in 739 of M30, the two were chosen to join the ranks of the Emperor's new legioness Astartes, specifically the 15th Legion, which would later become the Thousand Sons. This means that Ahriman was at least older than the Great Crusades and was born before the full conquest of Terra by the forces of the Emperor, which gave birth to the Imperium proper. So next we have Khan the Betrayer. He is one of the most infamous names in the galaxy. He is a Chaos Space Marine from the World Eaters and the ultimate mortal champion of Khorne, the Blood God. He leads his own brutal warband called the Butcher Horde, carving a path of destruction across the galaxy. Back in the day, in his origin points, before the 12th Legion became the bloodthirsty World Eaters, they were called the Warhounds, and Khan was there from the start. Born on Terra, he was one of the very first recruits into the Legion. By the time the Great Crusade rolled around and Angron, their Primarch, was rediscovered, Khan had already climbed the ranks to become the Centurion of the Elite 8 Assault Company. As for his age, well, since he was part of the first wave of Terran recruits into the Warhounds, Khan would have been well over 200 years old by the time of the Horus heresy. Then we have Adelon. So Adelon was one of the 11 Lord Commanders of the Emperor's children during the Great Crusade and the Horus heresy. He is known for being one of the most skilled commanders in the Legion, although he does lie about it time after time. Anyway, he had an intense dedication to mastering the art of war in all its forms. So when Fulgrim first met his legion after being reunited with the Emperor on Chemus, he didn't find a massive army waiting for him, but instead there were only 200 surviving Astartes, as there was a massive accident that involved a tragedy with their gene stock. Adelon was part of this small, original group of Emperor's children that hailed from Terra. That makes him part of the first wave of Astartes created during the Emperor's Unification Wars. Well, before Fulgrim came into the picture, Adelon was likely to be over 200 to 250 years old by the time of the Horus heresy. The second oldest here is Fabius B. So Fabius B, also known as the Clone Lord and the Spider, is a Chaos Space Marine apothecary who used to be the chief apothecary of the Emperor's children, but these days he mostly works alone, pursuing his own twisted experiments to become better in his creation of the new man than the Emperor. Baal was born during the Unification Wars in the 30th millennium to a minor noble family in the mountains of northern Europa on Terra. His birthplace was the city of Ingolstadt, possibly the same as the city of modern-day Germany, though that's up for debate. He was born before 712 of M30, the official start of the Imperium, making him thus older than the proper Imperium itself, and way older than the Primarchs. So even if it was the year 700 of M30 that he was born on, that means that he now is at least more than 12,300 years old, as of the current M42 millennia. And the oldest is Merir Astalan. So Merir Astalan is one of the infamous Fallen, who are traitors but not necessarily Chaos Space Marines, although they can be considered so. He is a key figure topping the list of the 136 Space Marines who first swore loyalty to Luther during his rebellion against the Lionel Johnson. Astalan is currently, as per our knowledge, the oldest Chaos or Traitor Space Marine, and aside from Lidu, he would have been the oldest Astartes ever as well. As a kid, he witnessed the brutal conquest of his homeland by the Emperor's Thunder Warriors, who, remember, were all killed in the year 669 of M30, which means Astalan would have been alive at that time. And according to Astalan, his people were amongst the first to stand with the Emperor during the Unification Wars. He also claimed that the Emperor chose recruits from his people to form the first Legion as Astartes. Astalan himself was inducted to the First Legion, the very first Space Marine Legion, and became one of the original 5,000 warriors, and might have been one of the astartes unofficially present in the Battle of Mount Ararat to get rid of the Thunder Warriors alongside the Custodes. This means he is currently 12,400 years old at the minimum, the oldest astartes and the oldest Chaos or Traitor Space Marine here. So if you like this video, then watch this other one too, and if you want to browse for other sci-fi and Warhammer content, then check out our channel. So subscribe and like for support, and yeah, while you're at it, bang on the bell icon for notifications on new video uploads. Till the next time, take care, boys.